Hey everybody, welcome to Trivera Tip Tuesday number 4. In case you missed it, number 3 was about marketing and communications during times of crisis. I am Christina Stetter. I'm the EVP here at Trivera. And this week we are continuing our discussion on communication during times of crisis, but focusing on leadership, internal communications, and employee communications that are so important right now. So I am being joined today by Nancy Kane, who works for one of Trivera's clients, Executive Agenda. So Nancy, can you introduce yourself and explain what Executive Agenda is all about?
Absolutely. Hello. Nice to be here. Yeah, so as Christina mentioned, I'm Nancy Kane. I'm a group chair with Executive Agenda. And Executive Agenda is a membership organization based in Wisconsin that really helps with professional and personal development for our members. And our job is to help grow strong, confident members who are able to proceed in their careers, advance as they are looking to do that. And we do that with a concept of peer learning and also coaching that we do as the group chairs really work on facilitating and coaching. So we have about 450 members in the state of Wisconsin, and we're going strong, helping executives throughout the state.
Perfect. Thank you, Nancy. I'm really excited to hear your insights. So before we get started on our conversation, I want to mention to everybody that we, of course, always have a bandwidth issue. The entire world is online and Zooming or Google Hangouting or whatever it is that you're doing. So we're hoping not to have any bandwidth issues, but if we do, we will power through them and just keep going because that's what leaders do. So Nancy, to get started, you work with, as you said, a variety of businesses. And obviously what's going on depends on industry and business size, but what have you seen about how the recent crisis has impacted your members in terms of leadership and communication?
Yes, I've had lots of conversations recently and maybe even more conversations than normal with members. Primarily, the members I deal with are in manufacturing, some in retail, some in service, but many of the manufacturing clients are essential businesses so that they're working during this time of COVID-19. Many of them, because they're in executive roles, are working from home, which causes some interesting challenges as they think about trying to keep their business running and doing what they need to do. And so they've been, when this outbreak first started and we started the stay-at-home order here in Wisconsin, primarily they started worrying about how do we keep our business going? How does this work at home work? How do we keep our employees who are actually production employees safe as we go through this? Once they got those initial things worked through, they began to really then look at what's ahead for us in terms of our businesses. So looking at forecasting, trying to understand what sales are going to look like, whether or not they need to do furloughing or layoffs. So there's a lot of moving parts as the members really grapple with keeping their businesses afloat and doing the things that they need to do to continue to be, successful in this very challenging time.
I'm sure that a lot of them really started to think about how do they communicate all of these thoughts? Because, you know, a critical thing to all of this is communication, how well they communicate their plans for the future and what they're taking care of right now is really an indicator of how well they're going to do. Did you have a lot of people asking you about those things?
We talk about communication a lot. I think that's one of the more major challenges that they're dealing with, because it's such a time of uncertainty for all of the businesses, from what's going to happen to their people, whether you think about it, it's safety or how they're managing to work at home. How do they keep those goals and objectives from, to be met? So there's communication that's needed all the time. And so how they go about doing that, how often they communicate, what means of communication that they're using, what's the messaging look like? Our traditional, all of the challenges we have in communication are really brought to the forefront with something like a COVID-19 response.
Yeah, I can see that. I think we saw the same thing with our clients. We had a lot of people who, for the first couple of weeks, were just really mostly putting out fires, I would say, thinking about what do we need to say to people right now so they know we're in business or we know that you have a job or whatever it is that you need to say. But now in these last couple of weeks, we have clients who have pivoted, who are maybe able to take advantages of changes in the marketplace and bring back, in some cases, some workforce that had been furloughed, which is a wonderful thing, and they're starting to
Mhm.
shift more towards what's next style of communication, not what's now style of communication. Have you seen that, Nancy?
Absolutely. As I mentioned, they were just so many things that had to be done at the beginning. And now it's like, okay, we're in this for a little bit longer period. How are we, what are the messages? What do I need to be talking about? And a lot of it is kind of regular communication that keeps people in the loop, that they know what's coming next and what's expected of them. So a lot of these folks are managing people who are working from home, who are challenged with kids also working, doing their schoolwork at home. So it's been a very interesting time for people to communicate. So they're really looking at what should the cadence of my communication be? How do I talk about the changes in the organization? How do I keep people calm and focused on the goals at hand? So there's a lot of thoughtfulness going into the communication, very much planfulness, which I think always is done, but it's a little bit different when you're doing it in a video format like this. And video meetings have become the standard for all of my members, whether it's in a group format or whether it's in a one-on-one format.
Yeah, I definitely think so. And I think that people are using their websites in all sorts of new ways. Obviously, as a digital marketing company, we're always telling people to put everything on your website, and that's really important because the website is really easy to change. So for some people, we're suggesting maybe you put hidden pages, or if you have an intranet, you can put those messages there. I definitely agree with the use of video. I think it's always important to remember that you have to frame your messages because people read things in their own head. And so you lose that contextual information that you get from tone of voice, body language, things like that. And so if you have a really critical message to deliver as a manager, a video is a great way to do it. And you can remember to balance that speed with perfection kind of thing. Right now, not perfectly perfect is okay. And you can see that with what we're doing right now. Neither one of us is professional YouTubers, but we're doing it because it's important to get the message out there. And I think that people need to know what's going on, and they need to hear it in a way that brings the humanity to what is happening. You know?
I agree. I think, two things that is we're talking about here really come into play. The ability to be transparent with our employees and the folks that work for us. We can't, of course, share confidential information in many cases, but there's a need for people to truly know what's going on. It calms them if they have a sense of really what's happening in the company, if they believe that they're being given really the information that is real and true, and not being told something in a cheerleading kind of fashion, but being really talked to as if this is what we're dealing with. We want you to know. I mean, it gives such a sense, I think, of trust in the organization when we're transparent with what we say.
It's interesting that you bring up trust because one of the things that you and I talked about last week when we were getting ready for this conversation is the Edelman Trust Barometer. So for people who aren't familiar with the Edelman Trust Barometer, it is a survey that Edelman has been taking for 20 years. So they really know a lot about trust. And in 2019, they identified employer trust as one of the biggest trends. So let me show you a couple of slides. Okay, so this thing is about 65 pages long. So this is page 22 of this deck. But they really felt like employers were seen as a trusted partner for change. And when you look at this, you can see that when they ask these people, and this is a worldwide survey, who they trusted, 75% of people said they trusted their employers, more so than non-governmental organizations, more so than business in general, more so than the government, and more so than media, which both came up as distrusted sources of information. And this is true worldwide. You can see here's the information from all around the world that employers really are trusted. People trust their employers to be honest with them. And this is true across the board, even by people who we would consider disenfranchised. So even though someone might feel that the system is failing them, they feel that their employer is going to tell them the truth about what's going on. Now, and in case you're wondering, does this apply right now? Interestingly enough, Edelman repeated a smaller subset of this survey very recently. They collected data between, as you can see here, March 6th and March 10th, 2020, to see if employers were a trusted source of information during COVID-19. And once again, employers show up as the most trusted source of information. 63% of people trust their employer communication over any other source. And most tellingly is they only need to see it once or twice. 50% of people say they only need to see the information once or twice. And if they see it, they will automatically believe that it's true. So I think that it's great when people can remember that communication and transparency are super important, and that people really are turning to their employers to be this trusted source of information.
That's a wonderful kind of concept that we talk about. So being trust in our businesses, in our communication is really critical for organizations today. And I think there's one other element about communication that I did want to address as well, and that is empathy, that we to be empathetic with what each other is going on in this time, and in terms of understanding what's going on with our employees who are working at home, what their concerns are, how they're managing their day, to enable them to be positive and do what needs to be done, and managing the fears of those employees who are actually in the facilities doing the work. So having that empathy for our employees and our peers in the organization, I think, is also a powerful way to support that trust. And I think finally, I would say empathy for ourselves, really going through this. And, you know, in order to be there for our people, our peers and our employees, I think really we need to take really good care of ourselves as well. So I just wanted to leave you with that. Let's make sure we take good care of ourselves.
Absolutely. You know, I really think the bottom line is, though, even though communication has really moved online because we're all socially distancing from each other, it's important to remember that there are people at the other end of whatever it is you're doing. So whether you're calling somebody a website user or visitor, a prospect, a member, or an employee, at the end of the day, that's a person, and they have wants, they have needs, and they have fears. And so if you can remember that and use that information as you're formulating your communications plan, it can really make a big difference whether you're communicating internally or externally. So that's it for today. Next week's Tip Tuesday, I will be talking with Julia Haas from Trivera client Dursey, and we are going to be talking about what do you do when your face-to-face marketing tactics, specifically your events, get canceled. So I hope you'll join us for that. But Nancy, I definitely want to say thank you to you for this conversation today. It was really wonderful and enlightening. And goodbye. Have a great day.
Thanks, Christina. Goodbye to you too.
Bye.